Thank you, Peter, and thank you very much for inviting me to the show this evening. I'm going to talk about what's been happening at Tujuh Bukit over the last 7 or 8 years. It's a shame you can't see that little top bit there, but that says disclaimer. The thing that I want to, not so much to do disclaimer, but I don't want to take all the credit for the stuff that's happening that I'm going to present. I've got a fantastic team of geos who've really done some amazing stuff, and I'm very enthusiastic to share what they've been doing. So Merdeka Copper and Gold is a relatively new company. Here's where their property locations are. The big kahuna is Tujuh Bukit down here, which is on the eastern end of Java. They have a property called Weta, which is a VMS, and we have Pani over here. Pani over here, which is a new one that we've recently picked up the other half of. It was recently held as a JV between J Resources and Merdeka, and we've just taken over the other half, which is now 4.7 million ounces of gold. We have a factory which is trying to extract more metal out of things. So, for example, we're trying to squeeze out a little bit more gold and some pig iron and some sulfuric acid out of pyrite. We've recently picked up a lot of nickel assets and this nickel asset processing facility, which is on the eastern part of Sulawesi. I won't talk about that too much. It's very new. What else was I going to say here? Now I was going to zoom into Google Earth, if I can be game enough to have a crack at that, because I think it's a bit easier to understand where Tujuh Bukit sits when you look at it like this. So just to sort of zoom out a little bit, so people are familiar with things. This is Indonesia. I'm zooming in over here. You can see Bali. These are the EPMs, or what it's equivalent of an EPM. It's called an IUP. And it's about a 7.5 hour drive, and including a ferry ride from the site to Denpasar for an airport. So the ways that you can get in and out of site is a 1.5 hour to 2 hour drive to Banyuwangi, and then a 7 hour drive to Denpasar, or you can drive up there and fly to Jakarta or Surabaya. It's pretty easy to get to as far as mining projects go. I'll sort of zoom in a little bit here, and you can start to see the open pits, the heap leach pad. And the thing I'm keen to show you is this little red island here. This is called Pulau Merah, which means red island. This little village is named after that red island. And if you zoom right in, you can see that it's actually a tourist beach. And it's a surf beach, and there's always surfers here and people having surf comps. This little place over here is called Mojo Surf, which is an international surf school. There's a really nice little cafe here called the Corner Cafe, which I sometimes go and sip a cup of coffee as I look over the island and watch the sunset in the afternoon. It's about a 12-minute walk from my house, which is this one, down through here and down to there. When I went for my site visit here, one of the things that really amazed me was how environmentally well done the place was. So around all these open pits are a heap of sediment ponds, and all of the muddy water that comes out of these things, which mining always makes if you're in a tropical environment, gets pumped back up to these ponds. So all of the water, including the stuff that, the heap leach water, well, don't waste the heap leach water, of course, because that's what we get the gold out of. But all the water from this entire area gets settled through these series of ponds, and it flows down this creek and pops out right at that exact beach where I sit down and have an icy cold cup of coffee in the afternoon. And there's always fish and kids swimming in that creek, and there's people fishing in that creek. And I'm astounded that, that the company has done such a fantastic job of managing. There's no muddy water spilling out into the surrounds here. It's really well done. Environmentally, it's spectacular. Okay, so the Banyuwangi part of Eastern Java is like the eastern end of Java. The very eastern part's called Banyuwangi, and it can be divided into 2 bits, the northern bit and the southern bit. The southern bit is this sort of area, and it's already kind of finished with its active volcanism. And it is easily observed by this topo-coloured map by the steeply dissected terrain, whereas the northern part is dominated by these volcanic flow plains. This is one of the biggest volcanoes in Indonesia. And it's you can imagine what it is like here now is what it would have been like when the high sulfidation event that occurred at Tujuh Bukit is. So Tujuh Bukit's down here. And once upon a time, it would have had this exact situation going on with all the sulfury stuff, leaching all the goodies out of the rocks and leaving that little buggy silica shell that we all know about. That photo was taken from a place called Mount Ijen, which is one of the only volcanoes in the world that has molten lava spurting out of it so hot that it catches fire and does these blue flames. And it's a tourist attraction for people to take their families down there when they're visiting places like Tujuh Bukit. They take their families down there and walk down the treacherous bowels of this volcano at night, which is the only time you can see it, just to do this. It's extremely dangerous. I took my kids and my wife there. As a geologist, you know, we're all mad on safety. I would not have done it again. I don't recommend it. Don't go down there. The exploration history of the area. It was discovered between 1991 and 99 by some people who noticed that red island called Pulimera had a lot of green staining on the side of it. And they took some channel sampling and got that 47 metres at 1.7 and 1.3. And they did a few holes which sort of seemed okay. Just to zoom in on the island that they were sampling, that's this red island. And you can walk over here at low tide and there is abundant malachite staining just hanging out of this island everywhere. And there's all these rocks like this on the beach, which geologists would look at that and think, gee, that looks like there's something going on here. And even in the little rocks that are in between here and there have all got malachite and argite just hanging out of them. So it was a no-brainer for those guys to walk up there and hit that. Anyway, Intrepid got involved and they identified the high sulfidation oxide target at surface. And they thought there's about 3 million ounces up there. And they also thought it was a pretty good looking spot to look for the bigger kahuna hiding below. Between 2008 and 2012, they drilled about 70 kilometres worth of drilling and had a helicopter supported drilling program where it was instead of a 7-hour drive to Denpasar, it was a 20-minute chopper flight. Unfortunately for those guys, they didn't have clear tenure on their property, and the government eventually said, wow, you've got something pretty good there. Let's just check all your papers are in order. And sure enough, they didn't, and they lost the property. I'm sure people who are quite familiar with the project may have another version or another view of what happened there, but that's the version that I'm telling, and I'm the guy telling the story. Merdeka got involved in around about 2012 and continued to work on the high sulfidation stuff. Didn't really do too much with the porphyry below, but they did kick off that high sulfidation thing. And in 2017, did their first gold pour. And because it was a heap leach pad, with a very simple heap leach pad, it was a money-making machine, and it worked really well. I arrived in 2018 when the decline had just started, and that's where I'm going to continue with this story. In the regional geology, Tujuh Bukit is situated on the eastern Sunda Banda Arc, which is this belt of rocks that comes through here. This is again coloured up by the topography. And you can see, if you look carefully, that there's a lot of fantastic deposits on this belt of rocks, like that one, and there's Elang, that's Elang, Barahijau, which means green rock. Here's Tujuh Bukit. There's a swag of epithermals up the coast there. So it's in the right neighbourhood as far as an environment for subduction and porphyries and all those volcanic things that geologists, as we are geologists, we know about. Zooming in on the area, there's been some, this surface geochem was done by Intrepid, and they identified that there was a big area of gold and copper and moly hanging around the Tujuh Bukit area, but they also identified a number of other things up here and along here, which are all in this corridor of altered and porphyry style things. And indeed, when you walk along these areas, you do see some high sulfidation alteration. One thing I like about this slide is it mentions this little thing called Gunung Manis. This is an epithermal. So at Tujuh Bukit, not only do we have the high sulfidation epithermal, we've got a big porphyry sitting up there, but a sweet, unexplored, low sulfidation epithermal here. This is a trifecta. And we're flying some UAV mag over the next month, and I'm hoping that's going to identify some structures for us to target and drill holes on. There's a lot of illegal miners working on this right now, and there's a lot of illegal miners working in this area here. And we're keen to get in there and drill some holes to see what lies beneath. This is how the RTP mag looks for the same area. And as we know, things like porphyries or intrusives generally have some sort of a bullseye type feature. You can see there's a bit of someone's drawn a circle around something that they thought they could see there. Not sure about the geophysicists in the room. Cam, can you see? You'd probably be able to point that. Yeah, you can see that one. Yep, there's another one over here. No, I don't know. This is that one where all the illegal miners working. And look at that, there's even a mag lode, whoops, even a mag lode down at Gooding Manus where the epithermal is, and they love these lineation things. So I'm hoping with our UAV mag, we'll get in there and find some stuff. The big halo or the circular feature at Tujuh Bukit is not that clear because it's been blown away by the pervasive high sulfidation alteration. Okay, I'm going to go through the geology of the area, and this is the fun stuff. The first rocks that appeared in the area is this volcano-sedimentary host rocks, and they're sort of deposited in this area. They've got some lenses of some andesitic stuff and some limestone, and that happened about 20 million years ago to about 8 and a bit million years ago. Because we're in a dilational jog setting with a pull-apart basin, we've made a little spot for some volcanism to occur, and this phreomagmatic breccia has appeared. Yes, and that's an important piece of the story that I'll talk about a little bit more later on. After that had been bubbling away for a while, we've had some more volcanic dacite erupt here. So this is not so much a phreatic thing, this is more of a volcanism. And then this precursor diorite, as we call it, reared its head. Now, this is probably the thing that's giving spawn to these. And as this fractionates on with time, it's the thing that spawns the porphyries. It does look a bit strange, like it's coming up on the sides like Batman. I was a bit freaked out by this intercept when my guys first put this on the table. But then if you walk down the beach, sure enough, you can see these exact rocks. So it does go like that. Some more pull-apart action occurred about 4.7 to 4.6 million years later. And this magma is continually fractionating, and eventually up pops this pink intrusive unit. So this is a pair of tonalites. The old tonalite, as we call it, is easily identifiable. It's the easiest rock in the place because it's heavily stockworked. Sitting within it or next to it or somehow next, later than it is what we call the young tonalite. And it looks pretty much the same, but it's got no stockwork veining, very distinctively different. The key thing to note about what's going on in this slide is this little dotted black area is the area of the metal deposition from the porphyry. And that's normally what you'd expect. In fact, it almost looks like something out of one of those porphyry experts who always make these kind of pictures with the mineralization going around the shell. And the most of the copper and stuff is right on the edges of this, or just on the rocks that are very proximal to those intrusives. That's where you get the metal coming out in the stockwork veining. And that's why it's important that these two rocks are drawn like that in this particular picture. Oh, there's also a little bit of scarn there where some of these things have touched one of these limestone units. The next thing that happened was a hyperabyssal dacite popped up. This is this green thing, and it has clearly cut through these other units. So it is post-porphyry mineralization. It has given rise to this other phreatomagmatic breccia that we call BXG2 and a little dacite dome at the top. So the key things to note about this one is these things clearly are post-porphyry mineralization. The only time you'll find copper in these rocks is if they've picked up some pieces of these coppery rocks as they've evolved and moved up or in their brecciation process. After that, there was a period of high sulfidation alteration, and this is pervasive throughout the area. This is the stuff where there are through various channels and cracks and fractures and sort of northwest trending structures. These high sulfidation fluids have popped up. Amazingly, they seem to dominantly occur on the contact between this green rock and this BXG2. The alteration is quite pervasive throughout this area. Because that high sulfidation was an oxidizing sort of vibe, the chalcopyrite and the bornite that was affected by this has now been converted to chalcocite, covalite, and enargite. So there's some very different types of metal in this area. This shows the same sort of thing, but it sort of stretches out in the timelines. So the previous interpretation didn't differentiate the difference between these two units very clearly. The previous interpretation had a lot of units, but they had sort of lumped these two generally together, and they'd actually put these two units over here. So that's one of the big changes that we've sort of nutted out, and it's mostly due to having a heap of really clever geologists, but also doing a heap of age dating. So this sort of shows the pre-porphyry rocks. the potassic alteration that's associated with the porphyry. There's the copper, gold and moly and a few other things that popped out at that time. And then the post-porphyry rocks with the advanced argillic alteration and the highly profitable and extremely lucrative gold, silver, oxide deposit, which is being mined right now. This is a screen snap showing the relative size of those ages. There are some overlaps throughout these things, of course. We've taken over 78 age dating samples, and we've got about another 40 that we're trying to smuggle through customs. No, we're not doing that. We've got about another 40 that we are going through the tedious process of exporting rocks from Indonesia to Australia, just to really tie down some of these things through here. Some of these rocks, I'm not sure you can see, they've got 2 dates. That's because they may have, I'm not sure why those ones have got 2 dates, but some of these ones up here have 2 dates because they might have picked up some fractures of the older rocks as they've sort of bubbled up in that BXG2 rock. Okay, now I'm going to just talk about the oxide stuff a little bit, and then I'm going to get into the porphyry stuff a bit more. So the interesting things that I find about this is it's a standard open pit mining, standard heap leach production system. What's cool is the 79% recovery on the gold. That's pretty astounding for a heap leach. Sometimes it's up to 90. And the all-in sustaining costs, which you can see must be here. So these are really low numbers. And if you're thinking about the tons and stuff that we're pushing through, so we were pushing like 250,000 tons and 150, a bit less. You can see our costs have gone up here. We had a slip on the heap leach pad around here somewhere, which took a little while to fix up. And that's why our costs have gone up a little bit and our production has gone down. Also, we're getting a bit deeper in a lot of our ore bodies, a lot of our open pits, so it's a bit more hauling and all those kind of things. The guidance for 22 is 100,000 ounces at around about $1,000 an ounce. So it's still making quite a tidy sum. This is a zoom in on the high sulfidation side of things. So what I'm showing you here is some of these northwestish trending high-grade zones coming through Pit B West and Pit B East. I won't go into too much of this stuff. It just fits the picture of a high sulfidation as everyone would have read in the textbooks. It's a no-brainer. It behaves itself beautifully. And here's what the rocks look like. Again, the same sort of story. These rocks are all essentially the same rock, but as we move around, they have more gold in them. So this rock is it's essentially BXG, which one that is, BXG2, and it's clay altered, and then less clay altered and more silica altered. This one's got a bit of an ironish breccia going through it, totally silicified. And this is the buggy silica that we all know and love, where everything's been rotted out and eaten away by the acidic stuff. And all you can see is a shell of what was formerly there. You can even imagine that this little clast was once one of those little clasts, and it's all gone now, and all you've got is the silica skeleton remaining. That's how it looks from the air. So there's 5 little open pits that are bubbling away here. Pit C has moved a lot since this photo was taken, and so has Pit A. Amazingly, when you're on the beach down here, the mining has been done, so you can't even see the open pits from that nearby beach. All you can see is the lip, which is covered in trees. There's Pulumira, that's the island you can walk across to at low tide. Okay, coming into the fun stuff, the porphyry stuff. I just thought I'd check my facts before on our website, and I just snapped this afternoon. It's been a little bit updated for recently, but we've got a few mining scenarios. We have a high grade portion, which sort of puts us up in this kind of neck of the woods, which is sort of like the Wappy Gold Poo kind of grade. So we're looking at the grades up here and the grades of the copper, and that's sort of looking around about 0.8 and 0.8 or something like that. And we'll probably tickle away at something like that for at least 20 years. I suspect that'll be more. And then there's another bigger whole part of the block cave system that will bubble away at a lower grade, and that'll go for another 20 or 40 years. This is another one I just snapped. What it says is 12 of the world's top 20 best copper hits are from us. And interestingly, some of these other ones, where are they? Oh, they've slipped off. I was going to point out the ones from our neighbours at Vale, just up the road at U'u, and anyway, they must have dropped off. But it's interesting seeing Newcrest with such a lot of big hits on there as well. And if you look at these, they are some crackers. What's this one? 918 metres at 0.7 and 0.8, I think that says. Yes. This is a little bit what it looks like in a perspective view. So these are the little open pits at the top. And amazingly, underneath where the pits are is where we find our highest grade blobs of the porphyry. It's hard to sort of see that from there. We put in a 1.8 kilometre decline or 1.9 kilometre decline, and that's where we do most of our drilling from. The top part, because it's got all that high sulfidation alteration, it's just a mess to drill through, and everyone hates drilling through it. We lose rods, and it's a disaster. So putting this thing in's been fantastic. We drill a lot of holes pretty quickly from down here. In saying what I said before about there being something underneath the pits, we suspect that there is. We've had a few snifters of something in this area here, and we are going to try and turn the rigs around as soon as we possibly can and poke some holes in there. Right now, we're heavily focused on converting as much of this to indicated as we possibly can. There's the resource that we pushed out in the end of last year. Our next public resource will be at the end of June, maybe the 1st of July, it'll go public. And I'm hoping, I expect it'll be a similar amount of tonnes. I'm hoping the grade goes up a bit, but I'm really rooting for a lot of extra inferred, indicated. Okay, let's look at some of the interesting geology of Tujuh Bukit. So this sort of shows the loose structural framework where the structures that are going in this northwest sort of trend, sort of pre-mineralisation. These are the late ones, are post-mineralised. They sort of go east-west. These are often full of water. In fact, the first one that we mined through, this one here, we called it the Big Wet Fault, and it did make a lot of water, and we had to mine through it. So that was a bit of a challenge. We did the grout curtains, and that's a whole nother story, and someone could make a PhD if you're a drill and blast guy. What I want to point out over here, we're going to refer to this picture a lot over the next few slides. This shows the precursor diorite. It shows the pink rock, which is a bit hard to see there, which is the old tonalite. The red one's a new tonalite. This red hatching is a bit strong, but that shows the stockwork envelope. And this is this hyperspectral dacite and BXG2, and that's that dacite dome. So these are the post-porphyry things. It's good to sort of get your head around that one because we're going to look at that a few times. And this is more of the schematic stuff. So this, we'll just talk about what the rocks look a little bit like. There's a bit of magnetite skarn. This is showing some of the changing mineral where we've got some chalcopyrite. I think I can't quite read that. Chalcopyrite has been rimmed by cavolite and chalcocite. These are some of the precursor, the volcanogenic host rock. There's a bit of an andesite flow, and that must be some limestone over there. What does that say? Ferromagmatic breccia, that's BXG1, and this must be this volcanic dacite. And what have we got there? The precursor diorite, that's this pink one. And here are the porphyry looking rocks. So there's the old tonalite. You can almost imagine that looks like a tonalite that's been massively stockworked. There's the young tonalite. It's a terrible picture. And there's the hyperspectral dacite belting up through the middle. That must be the BXG2, and this must be the dacite dome at the top, very, very proudly sitting up there. We've got a lot of great stuff going on there. The technology that we've been pumping into Tujuh Bukit is incredible. We've been pushing core scan through almost everything we drill. And one of the things people say you should be doing with core scan is the textural recognition. Some of these rocks are perfect for textual recognition. And we had a PhD student from Codes who was doing that. He developed the idea that it could work, but most of his stuff went on to some bigger partners in those Amira things. But what he did work out that you could easily identify things like the old tonalite, which is chockers with stockworks, and this other rock, which is the VDA, I think, of the hyperspectral, what is it, dacite dome, which is pretty clear and very regular grain size. Another really cool thing we've been doing is machine learning, and this is where it really gets exciting. Well, for me, I think this is cool. We got this computer and we used a tool called machine learning. We exported all of our lithos and we coded them up with all of the immobile element geochemistry. We used these immobile elements as features and the litho as a feature to see what would happen. And we let the computer do that, that little bit of machine learning. And sure enough, we asked it to colour everything up by the lithologies and make blobs of things that are, if it's similar to each other, join them together. If it's got a bit of a broad range in geochemistry, then spread it out a little bit. But if it's different, don't put it next to each other. And it was a pretty good tool for evaluating our logging. So we validated some things where this guy's called that rock the wrong coloured rock. He should have called that a pink one. And this, I can't quite see from here, but it validated the logging really amazingly well. I was blown away by how well it had demonstrated some discrepancies in our logging. But more importantly, it highlighted that this rock that we thought was one unit, and we called it the volcanic dacite, has two distinctly different populations. And when you colour code it by that colour and you put it into a 3D package, amazingly, or maybe not so amazingly, they're actually spatially separate. So they really are different rocks. They look exactly identical in hand specimen, but yes, they're different. And you can see the same sort of thing happening up here with this old tonalite. And when you plot that up in 3D, it seems that there are two populations. One is a bit of an inner and one is a bit of an outer zone. So that is totally awesome. We're taking this to the next level. We are moving forward with this, which I won't go into. I'll talk a little bit about the alteration. It's a typical high sulfidation alteration halo where you have the hottest and the most acidic, or the most acidic stuff, and you move out into the less acidic stuff, and they're coloured by these things. This is after the sky. So that's like the alteration model that I'm sure everyone's seen before. Here's how it looks when we do it in Tujuh Bukit. Once again, in plan and in section with that same section. What the section shows is that high sulfidation alteration is pretty much randomly everywhere. So it's gone through and just made a mess of things. It's overprinted the porphyry alteration, completely obliterated it in most instances. We did the same thing with the alteration as we did with the lithos, and sure enough, it has put things in loose groups, and these are the groups that we were using. And the way we arrived at these was we got together with the core scan guys and some experts and said, if we want to get core scan to code our stuff, which are the key alteration minerals that we should use for advanced argillic? And they said, oh yeah, use this one, that one, and that's what we did. So we followed those instructions, and that's how it's all panned out. There's a lot of grey overlap with that particular method, and I don't really think it's that great, and it doesn't help us a lot with what we want to do next, which of course is the metallurgy. So, and when we saw this, we said, oh, we can do a lot better than this. So we've broken it down, again, using core scan, into these 8 groups, which are not so much those generic lumped, those alteration facies. We've broken it up into the ingredients that actually make those up. And this works a lot better. We're only just working our way through this right now, and I don't want to go into that because it's a whole nother world of machine learning, and I'm not the right guy to talk about that stuff. But I am amazed that we are doing such a great job of this stuff, and I do recommend when we publish this paper, which will be in about 2 months, we'll publish a paper on this, or 3 months on the alteration stuff. It's worth looking at and taking that method to look at other things to help work out your own alteration domains. Okay, let's look at the lithos and the metal. So this is looking in plan view. You can see there's those post porphyry intrusives in the middle there. And when you look at how the deposit sits, as you'd expect when you've got the porphyry poking up in the middle, you expect a halo around the outside. And indeed, that's what you see. Interestingly, over here, you can see that these intrusive rocks and that purple precursor diorite is where all the copper is. So the rocks, as I was saying before, the rocks that have the most of the metal are either the porphyry rocks themselves or the rocks that are very close to the porphyry. These other rocks don't have much copper in them, gold or moly. So previously people thought that maybe the high sulfidation alteration had moved the metal considerably, and the lithology wasn't so important as getting that alteration correct. This is that same slide that I was talking about before, just to get your eye in this. These ones are the post porphyry things, and you can see over there's not much copper in there, or gold and moly through those little areas. It is interesting that we are seeing something coming out here, and we sort of suspect that there is another blob of porphyry that's going to appear in that area when we drill a few more holes out that way. This is the same sort of view, but with that alteration. So you can see this pink stuff is the advanced argillic. You can see where it sits there and there. That's these dark blobs. It doesn't seem to play much to do with the copper or the porphyry-related metal at all. So this says that the alteration is not really impacting where the porphyry metals are. The same with the stockworks. The stockworks, as you'd expect, normally it's going to be close proximity to the stockworks is where you get the metal. And this sort of supports that thing again, that maybe there is something else going on over here. Okay, this is showing a little bit of the transformation of some of those primary copper minerals like bornite and chalcopyrite, and how it is changing to enargite and covalite and chalcocite with the advanced argillic alteration. So that high sulfidation is changing the format of those copper minerals. And this is just some really cool hits. I'm really proud of some of the hits that we've had, and I'm just going to show one over here. I'll see if I can zoom in on this. The pink, the stuff that's shaded in the background is the grade shells that we had in July 2020. So all the drilling that we've done since then has been really changing the story a lot. So this colour is the 0.5, this is the 0.2% copper, and this colour in the drill hole is the 0.5. So we've really changed the shape of that 0.5 through there. The 0.2 is pretty much the same, but we've had a lot of holes that have really changed the story about where the, I don't know, we're finding out so much more with all the drill holes that we're doing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, one of the things that I'm good at, that I think I'm good at, is getting the systems to make all these things work. It's a bit hard to see that there, but it says, so this is our workflow. We've got this poster stuck everywhere that people walk if they're in the core shed, so people always are reminded to do the same process. There's 3 different processes. One's called the drilling, one's called the logging and sampling process, and this is the sample prep. So we've got our own prep facility on site, which is such a fantastic thing to have. It means that instead of shipping kilos and kilos of samples to Jakarta on the back of some dodgy truck, waiting for someone to do a Busang trick, we're sending little packets of pulps on a plane, and it's so quicker and cooler and more, faster. I won't go through this stuff too much, but we've got a really excellent process for logging all of our core. I've got a little video that I'm going to show that takes you through this. Here's how the core shed works. These things are 6 metre intervals, so that's about 54 metres from about here to about to here. The core appears here in the back of the driller's ute. The driller reverses, he drives up to this thing and his wheels drop into this little ditch, which puts it at the exact position for it to be unloaded into some roller racks, gets washed, comes through here, straight into the core photography. Everyone wants to see the core photos ASAP. Everyone loves core photos, so we do those first. Then we do a little bit of geotech work, chuck it in the oven for a while at 60 degrees. If you go any hotter, you can cook the core scan things, so we don't want to go too hot. We'll also boil off the mercury. Into core scan. We've just upgraded our core scan lab last month or this month. So this is the old one, whereas people know core scan goes in the door and out the same door. The new one goes straight through. So we've changed the configuration of the core shed now so that the photos are done here, goes to the drawing, and then it goes through the core scan, and then it goes over to this area where it gets logged with all these amazing things. And we have got some very cool things like the IQ logger and the Equitip are 2 of my particular favourites. We're also doing whole tray SG, which is something that I'd never thought of before. We're using a cool tool called an IQ logger, which is like a laser guided structure measurement for your alphas and betas. We've got an office over here that's been expanded to sit about 25 people, and you can look out there and see stuff. After it's been logged, it goes through this soundproof wall. There's all these little portholes in the wall. We've got some core saws there that cut it up, comes back out here to do the sampling, goes back into here for the sample dispatch, where our Intertech guys, they start processing it, and they the finished product for those guys is little pockets of pulp that goes to Jakarta with a comprehensive QAQC program. There's a few photos of the guys doing some of their things, but what I'm going to try and show, this would be a real test, is if I can get a video going. Okay, so my guys have made this video. I'm going to cut through some of the fluffy bits of it. There's a quick view of the site. It's in the jungle, some of our sediment dams. There's something else. Here's the core shed. So we've got some fantastic gardens. I'm a keen gardener, so we've got a lot of gardening going on. This is looking at the side there. We put these core pallet covers on things, which is a trick I picked up from Simon Shakespeare from his WAPI days. There's some of the core on the racks, just a bit of a pan through there. And this is in the office. You can look out the windows and see those people there. A few geologists writing up their QAQC reports. On the walls, you can see the same things that we've been looking at just to make sure everyone's focused. Every drill hole we drill, we make sure people are aware of what they're drilling through and how it relates to the model and what they're expecting to see next. We've got pictures of the core shed so people don't get lost when they're wandering around. And there's the workflow so that people do the same thing every day. There's an old bloke there. That was Simon Meldrum. Here's a few geos. And here's this, the drillers have just turned up and that thing drops down. Actually, these are not truly the drillers. These are actors, but they look like drillers because the drillers, I just asked them to make a video. So they roll that across there. Luckily, they've got a bit of working quickly, not rushing though. That's just fast forward. We throw those trays away. No, we don't. We keep those and we reuse those lids, but we don't buy many lids. These guys are going to wash it, make sure it's all looking good. I'm going to speed that up a little bit. Dun, 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 dun. After they've cleaned it, make sure it's all good. They bring over this thing. No, not much manual handling. There you go. Put that in there. Dun, dun, dun. Good-o. And then it goes in there. Jack it up, stick it on there. Boom, boom, boom. Over to the core photography device. This is a fantastic thing. And there it is on the inside. People make sure that everything's ready to go on that. Quite sturdy. We've got the highest percentage of professional women in the company in my team. I've got about 25 geos. And those guys are marking some stuff up. Then it comes out of there into this oven, ready to be cooked for core scan. Speed that up a little bit. Rightio, that's it, mate. Put that in there. Rightio, after that. And into the core scan area. So luckily there's no sound. This guy is thrashing it out to some heavy metal, and he's doing the QA/QC on that core scan. We often get picked up. Some beautiful cable light in that bit of core. So yeah, we're running that core scan 24 hours a day. In fact, the core shed is now running 24 hours a day. After it's been done this person is doing some wax stuff where you put it in the paraffin and then you weigh it and all those things you do, weigh it in water. There's a couple of graduate geologists. We've got a fantastic graduate geologist program. It looks like Simon Meldrum with an old cat hanging around the old core. It's good getting porphyry experts, are fantastic people to help with you. This lady is doing Equitip. This lady is using that IQ logger. It's that structural tool that you wiggle it around and it somehow works out the alphas and betas for you. And this guy's doing a mag sus on a very small piece of core. It's too small, really. Point load test every 5 meters. Pop. We treat every hole as a geotechnical hole. There's a geotech just making as much noise as he can, trying to annoy people. But he's happy with his break. And it goes through these little portholes. Didn't quite show him opening the door there. We don't have any automatic core saws. When we first kicked this off, everyone was convinced that the core was so bad that we wouldn't be able to put it through something like an Almonte. In hindsight, we probably could, and we probably will. These guys are bagging up the samples, making sure they always sample from the right-hand side, and they're being supervised by a geologist. He's a bit boring. And then it goes into the lab. So this is our on-site prep facility. These two geologists are doing a inspection, making sure the oven's not cooking it too hot. We weigh it wet and dry. That's where those scales are over there that she's carefully looking at. And next to that is the Terminator crusher. And that guy is just, it crushes it down to 6 mils. He's cleaning it very carefully with that air. Obviously it's turned off, no dirt in there, nothing left in there. And the other guy is working the board crusher. And the board crusher, as we know, is the best way to get a representative sample with best in class rotary splitting device. Those two other guys are working the LM2s, putting a bit of dirt in those bags. There's a couple of girls. That girl on the left is recently married one of the people in her graduate class. And this guy's back in the core scan. Okay, that's the end of that. So these are my last slides. That's a bit more of that outcrop on Porphyry Mirror. Sometimes we get the guys to go over there at low tide, especially if we have visitors, and we always take these little pictures of the geology and stuff. And there's a sunset from the place where I sometimes sit and have an icy cold cup of coffee, play guitar and watch the sunset and look at that creek with the kids fishing and swimming. That's it.